Oh, hey, good morning, grade 6. Welcome to week 6, lesson 21. Can you believe it? We are already on week 6. So, today's lesson, I think it's going to be very, very short. All right. So, the other week, right, I was asking you to name characters, cartoon characters, and everyone who did answer the questions, who did give me the names of the characters, they did very well. So everyone got it right. So I'm going to challenge you a bit this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the name of cities, famous cities around the world. So it can be anywhere around the world. So now today's city that you have to name for me, it's this one. So if you do know the city, you're going to go to the comment section under the post of today's lesson, then you type the name of this city for me. All right. Now let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Now we all know that Mrs. Ward on Friday, she gave you Monday week 14 as a mental maths work. So now what you're going to do, you're just going to pause the video and then you mark your work. Then you're going to complete Tuesday and Wednesday, week 14. That's for Wednesday. Remember, on Tuesday we don't have maths, which is tomorrow. All right. Now we're going to our new topic for this week. All right. So new topic, patterns. All right. So this is a big topic in maths, patterns. But what are we going to do now? We are only going to do geometric patterns. There's two kinds of patterns that we're going to be dealing with in maths this year. So one is geometric and the other one is numeric patterns. Right, just to define both geometric and numeric patterns, so that you get to see how they differ, and we move on to our geometric patterns. Right, so the first one, which is geometric patterns. So we can define a geometric pattern as a pattern that uses figures. All right. So those figures can be shapes, can be objects, or anything. All right. And those figures that show or they follow a specific rule. Sorry for my writing. All right. So a geometric pattern is a pattern that uses figures that follow a specific rule. So as I said before, those figures can be shapes, can be objects, or can be anything, even letters. All right. Now let's define numeric. A numeric pattern, we can define it and say that a numeric pattern is a pattern, or we can say is a sequence of numbers that follow a specific rule. Right. So the difference between those two, as you can see now, so one uses figures to show a pattern, one uses numbers to show a pattern. Right. So both of these, what's common between the two is that they all have a rule. Right. But we'll do the rule and stuff later on. Right, so now to show you an example for both of these so that you can see exactly what are we referring to when we say numeric patterns and geometric patterns. Right, so we have these two examples here. So the top one, I'm going to call it 1, then the bottom one, I'm going to call it 2. So the first one, as you can see there, we have shapes, we're given shapes, a square and a triangle, they are repeating, right? And then the second one, we're given numbers, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Right, so as you can see here, if you can do me a favor, just pause the video and then you try to figure out which one is numeric, which one is geometric from these two examples, 1 and 2. Right, now that you're back, okay. Now, as you can see, the first one is using shape to show a pattern. So obviously that one, we can take it as a geometric. So number 1 is geometric, and then the second one obviously is going to be numeric. So that's the difference between the two patterns. But this what we are doing here, we are doing geometric patterns exactly. I was just explaining the two so that you know exactly what is the difference between geometric and numeric. So numeric patterns, you will do that later, maybe with me or Mrs. Ward. Right, so what the focus now is geometric patterns for this week. Right, so if you can pause the video and copy the notes in your workbook 1. So as we defined geometric pattern before, we said it's a pattern that uses figures that follows a specific rule. And then I told you that those figures can be a shape, which means a triangle or square, a circle, or anything, right? Or it can be a letter or anything. So any figures, they can use any figures to show a pattern that will follow a rule. Now, the second term that I need you to understand when we're doing geometric patterns is constant difference. So a constant difference, it's when you are, obviously, constant means something that is not changing, and then difference is it's a answer when you subtract two numbers, right? So a constant difference, the whole term means that when you're getting the same number when subtracting any two consecutive terms in a pattern. So for example, let's say your pattern was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So here, as you can see, so to find our constant difference, we subtract any two consecutive numbers. So what do? We say 2 minus 1, we get the answer is 1. So if we say 3 minus 2, the answer must be 1. Then in this case, we can say that we have a constant difference, because when you subtract two numbers that follow each other, we get the same number, which is 1. That's our constant difference. Now let's take an example and see how we do geometric patterns. Remember to pause the video, you copy the notes, and then we can move on to the next screen. Now that we know what a geometric pattern is, let's take an example and see how we an example from geometric patterns and see if we can be able to answer it. Now the first example that we're going to have is this one, where we have shapes here, and I believe that you know what shape it is, this one. I hope that you still remember this. So how do we determine the shape? We count the number of sides. So let's take this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 is hexagons, right? So it's a hexagon. So here we have figures, which is hexagons. Now the first one that we have is this one, number 1. That's the first figure. Number 2, that's that one. Number 3, that's the third figure. And then we have the last figure, 4. All right. So as you can see here, we see that the first one has got one. The first figure has got one hexagon. So we write down in our table form, because we represent our data in table form. So 1. And then our second figure, we see that there's how many hexagons there? There's 2 of them. So there's our 2. Then 3, there's 3. Then 4, there's 4. Now for 8, we can literally see that here, to get the 8 and 11 figure, how many hexagons you're going to have there. We look at the pattern. So the pattern, we have the first one and the second one and the third one and the fourth one. So what's actually happening here? We can see that from the first one going to the second one, they are adding 1 polygon. From the second to the third, they are adding another polygon, and so on, right? So obviously means that number 8, we are going to have how many polygons? 8 polygons. Number 11, 11 polygons, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an activity, I think 2, then you're just going to do that for me. So the main focus was to know how to extend a given geometric pattern by observing, right? So remember to pause the screen, copy, and then you can play the video again. All right, so I've given you an activity here. There's 2 pages. So page 1, activity 1, page 2, activity 2. So you're just going to answer the questions here. So for example, the first one there, it says that you need to draw the next pattern in the sequence. As you can see here, you have the first one there, and then the second one there, then the third figure there. So what you need to do, you need to draw the next pattern that you will see in that sequence. Then you do the same all the way to the last one. So as I said before, beginning of this lesson, that this lesson is going to be very, very, very short. So I think that's quite easy to understand. Right, so please do that for me. We'll mark it tomorrow, and then you also do Tuesday and Wednesday mental maths, which is week 14 on page 28 to 29. All right, don't forget to give me the name of the city I asked you in the beginning of the lesson, and enjoy. Bye bye. See you on Wednesday.